In this video series, we have been fixing Disney's The Rise of Skywalker. We are doing our best to make it a good and proper Star Wars movie through the power of established lore. In part 5, we will look at breathing on Mustafar. Don't hold your breath, none of it makes any sense. It's time to iron out some iron trees. Rey's training and how it strains credibility. Is it possible to make sure she is credibly strained? New force powers, and how the mouse used their power to force something new.
You think it was worth coming to this late at night?
Yeah.
Well,
Good over evil, always.
The movie was perfect. It was exactly the way it had to be. It was a fantastic movie, but it was good. It was really, really good.
In addition to getting the rights,
has written a story, people are going to be like, oh my god.
That was funny, wasn't it?
Love Disney movies.
Good, clean Jedi fun.
The way Daisy's head is shaped.
Wearing like Porg costumes, they're in their 40s.
I really think someone out there should.
While I have your attention, like, subscribe, bell icon, and comment. I'm just going to leave those here, right under this stack of credits, if you catch my drift. Why are there dead trees? I had no idea what was going on until weeks after walking out of the movie. Later, I heard this sequence is supposed to be on Mustafar. We've already seen what that planet is like. Once again, though, if you think about it, that makes no sense. These trees would have to grow in the past. Maybe the planet is so hot that a forest of mature trees can be killed by the heat. Saplings would be even more vulnerable. So how did they grow in the first place? Clearly, they all died at the same time, while the trees are the same age. Yet whatever happened, nothing was hot enough for the wood to burst into flames. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on. To the reference material. A book from 2009 says that Mustafar is racked by tidal forces, like Io. It specifies that the planet exports ore, extracted from rivers of lava. The imports are food, water, and machinery. That makes sense. The book also says that all surface life died. Of course the ecosystem and food web will be devastated, or even wiped out. It also states that this happened in 3996 BBY. It makes no sense for these trees to be 4,000 years old. To have been dead for all that time is absurd. Yet they can't be as young as they appear either, or why would the trees die? The only way to explain it is by invoking JJ and friends. Someone looked up Earth volcanoes and found that Earth forests have been killed by them. Then, without giving it a moment's thought, lazily dropped that feature onto another world. Absolutely zero attention paid to the history of this planet, or what would and wouldn't be there. Someone thought putting Earth phenomena in the Star Wars universe made him look terribly clever. Instead, it proved the exact opposite. Surface-level imagery, not a drop of care and effort beyond that. Now, it is acceptable to doubt this book. I certainly don't trust it. It's clearly written based on some of those 3D animated shows. Personally, I've never seen an episode. All I know is that they're the foundation of the reboot. And indeed, the 3D animated ones seem to have been rebooting before there was an official reboot. There's a mention in the book of Ahsoka Tiko, who only appeared in the 3D one. But that's even more damning, because this means the book should apply to the Disney universe. As for me, I know this book is unreliable. Right next to the Mustafar entry, there's one on Mon Calamari. What could be wrong with that? Well, we already know things about the Mon Cal and their world. For example, that there are two races here, the Mon Calamari and the Quarren. We know the Mon Cal prefer to live on the surface, both the rare land and in floating cities. We know the Quarren are more subnautical and live below the surface of those floating cities. We know both species can breathe air and water, and that they sometimes find it uncomfortable to switch to the aquatic mode. Accordingly, there is an organic gill symbiote, a benign facehugger. Both kinds of natives can use these, and tourists can find them invaluable. The facehugger only lives for a week, so it's perfect for a visit. It is stated that using a gill symbiote is less cumbersome than air tanks. That might be technically correct, but it really doesn't line up with what else we know. We've seen existing examples of air tanks, and they really aren't all that unwieldy. The first is a Roma 6 mask, as worn by the Falcon crew. These are made by Gandorthral atmospherics and are very capable. The main body is smaller than two of Leia's fists, very compact. The internal air tank lasts 10 minutes and can be connected to larger back-mounted tanks. Best of all, the small internal tank can be replenished by processing surrounding gases. They can dilute or compress an atmosphere of the wrong density. They can heat or cool the air, so you might wear one when it's not strictly required. I hear Hoth gets a bit chilly this time of year. Naturally, the Roma 6 can be adjusted for a variety of non-human requirements. However, this device is better as a filter than a scuba tank. It excels at filtering an atmosphere, and it can run in that mode for an hour. Then you need to install replacement filters, a trivial task. You can definitely hold your breath long enough to swap the filters out. What can't the Gandorthral Atmospherics Roma 6 breath mask do? Vacuum. You need a spacesuit to supply pressure, and that's not what this is. Quite by coincidence, the one thing it can't do is the only time we see it used. The Falcon never passes any barrier that might be able to contain air pressure. Using these inside a space slug is a total mistake. It's just not correct. I don't remember the Empire Strikes Back novelization making any attempt to explain it, but it's been a while since I had my hands on those books. The real reason is that making spacesuit costumes is hard to do convincingly. If they're only going to be used in one scene, it makes sense not to bother. Star Wars isn't the only sci-fi universe that has made this mistake. In Mass Effect 2, one mission involves taking a topless woman into an airless environment. Well, it does for me. I don't know how you played it. The game realizes this can't work, so it gives her a face mask. No shirt, no helmet, nothing.
That's a collector. Are you saying those bastards even experimented on one of their own?
Hang on a minute. I was talking about Mustafar, and now we're in a space slug. Let's resolve this tangent by hopping over to Naboo instead. This adds an interesting wrinkle. First of all, the Federation tries to gas Obi-Wan. The other Federation, that is. And I suppose they succeed. They were just expecting the lethal gas to be fatal. Understandable, but a mistake. This scene is an exemplary use case for the Roma 6. We know the gas isn't corrosive, or so toxic it gets in through the skin and eyeballs. Holding your breath is enough to be safe, so the breath mask would also work. We're not here for that scene in orbit though. Down on the planet, we see a completely different apparatus. For this mission, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan carry the A-99 Aquita breather. This allows them to dive to the bottom of a lake, to the Gungan capital city. It seems reasonable to assume Ota Gunga is one of the deeper cities, surely hundreds of meters. The city is meant to be hidden after all. Sunlight can only reach about 200 meters down, and the Jedi seem to swim from blue to black water. While we're down here, let's dismiss the idea of going through the planet core. This is, of course, utter nonsense. Sorry, Daddy Big Boss Nass, Your Honor, but it's not correct. Boss Nass isn't entirely fluent in Basic. He doesn't know what he's saying. Obviously, the tunnels only go through the crust of the planet. The questionable book takes NASA's word at face value. The planet is a world of peculiar geology. It lacks a molten core, instead possessing a honeycombed interior surging with luminous low-cap plasma. Wide, shallow seas and swamps separate plains of grass and scattered points of elevation. Not only is this nonsensical, it's also completely unnecessary for anything in the movie. Getting from the Gungan city to Theed Palace works fine without going through the core of the planet. All you need is a network of tunnels through the crust to escape a landlocked lake. The plasma is used in Gungan weapons, but again has no need of a planet core. There is no reason to say it lacks a molten core. All you get from that is that a guy with a thick accent used exactly the right word. Better to assume he was using figurative terms.
They think their brain's so big.
Right, back to the Jedi equipment. The A-99 breather actually comes in two forms. The original TPM Visual Dictionary showed one variant, and the expanded book shows another. The one from the movie is riddled with holes, the other is smooth. Both are listed as compressed air tanks with capacity for 2 hours. The Roma 6 has remarkably good capacity. The A99 has absurd capacity. But I've come up with a way to harmonize these two props. Let's say the A99 is more specialized than the Roma 6. It has been designed to work in water and nothing else. The difference between the two pictures is a set of covers. Remove those covers from the grey one, and it becomes the brown and white one seen in the movie. Then, instead of storing 2 scuba tanks in the palm of your hand, it's a mechanical gill. The perforated white cylinder is a water intake, to be processed into oxygen on the fly. Then there's no capacity inconsistency. If the A99 just held hours of air, how could air tanks be cumbersome? The Aquita breather is a fraction of the size of the organic gill or filter unit. Speaking of the organic gill, the Mon Calamari was supposed to have been the example. The questionable 2009 book describes the history as having first contact with the Republic. This is the same timeframe as the Mustafar date, 4166 BBY. This is compatible with the prequels, where Quarren are shown in the Republic Senate in Episode 1.
I will not defer. I've come before you to resolve this attack on our sovereignty now. I was not elected to watch my...
The Mon Cal appear in Episode 3, or at least that's what I'm informed they are. It's a bit hard to make out the details. But these appearances are mistakes. We already know about the history of the Mon Calamari. We know about the man named Akbar, later a rebel admiral. I'll give you a moment to repeat his most iconic line, just to get it out of your system. Ready?
Admiral, we have enemy ships in Sector 27! Our cruisers can't repel firepower of that magnitude!
We know that the Mon Cal joined the Alliance to restore the Republic less than 2 years BBY. We know that the Mon Cal developed space travel to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and make friends with new civilizations, to boldly go where no fishman or squid thingy had gone before. It had been hard to develop that tech, since the Mon Cal had difficulties mining ore. With most of the world underwater, even the amphibians had trouble reaching the planet's crust. In contrast, the Quarren prefer to live on the sea floor. By befriending the Quarren, a new age of technological development began. Orbital infrastructure was created. Spaceports, shipyards, all the supporting facilities. More than most, the Mon Cal saw the stars as islands in the galactic sea. The planet of Mon Calamari is on the outer rim of the galaxy far, far away. It had made contact with its neighbors, and a few rogue traders were also aware of the location. But eventually they made first contact with the galactic community, the Pan-Galactic government, and it wasn't the Old Republic. Fitting our Trek Federation-like characterization of them, the Mon Cal came in peace. They broadcast messages of friendship and free trade. This would probably have worked if the history of the galaxy had unfolded the way the new book described. Instead, they crossed paths with the Empire. They were interested in trade, all right. The Imperial forces were very pleased with Mon Cal technology and decided to take it for themselves. The Mon Cal were seen as gentle, and therefore stupid, a natural slave species. The Empire launched an invasion, and the Mon Calamari protested. The Emperor ordered the destruction of 3 floating cities, to make an example of them, demonstrating the price of insubordination. Unexpectedly, the plan backfired. A peaceful race with no history of war wiped out the initial invasion force. They started creating battleships, weapons. Akbar had been the leader of Coral City. Now he was one of the first enslaved by the Empire. He had been taken as an interpreter and personal servant for an officer. Before long, Akbar was a gift to Grand Moff Tarkin, the overlord of the Outer Rim.
Vader, release him.
As you wish.
Akbar played along, secretly studying the Empire. This is how he learned of a rebellion against the Empire, target of Tarkin's ire. When Tarkin was en route to the completed Death Star, rebels attacked his ship.
I think you overestimate their chances.
After they escaped with Akbar, he returned to his people to convince the Mon Cal to join the Rebel Alliance. For this, he was given the rank of Commander Akbar. His promotion to Admiral Akbar would happen soon afterwards, when he returned with a new kind of starfighter. But the origin of the B-Wing is a story for another video.
Gray leader standing by.
Green leader standing by.
Lock S files and attack positions.
May the Force be with us.
For now, we've established the 2009 book can't be right. We already knew the history of the Mon Calamari in 1995. But even in the corrupted, rewritten reboot timeline, the Disney movie is not correct. You can't just slap a dead forest onto the volcano planet because you like the visuals. Next, we have the Rey training sequence. This is a very odd choice. In the final movie of the reboot trilogy, after 3 whole hours, Rey begins her training. Let's compare Rey to the Skywalkers. Both of the Skywalkers were too old to begin the Jedi training process.
No, he will not be trained.
No.
He is too old.
Yes, too old to begin the training.
Luke doesn't even appear in the movie until 17 minutes in. Luke is offered Jedi training after 35 minutes.
You must learn the ways of the Force.
And begins training before 57 minutes. Luke passively uses the Force in a plot-critical way at the end, after 1 hour 54 minutes. Luke actively uses the Force for the first time at 2 hours 11 minutes. By 2 hours 15 minutes, Luke is instructed to seek further training.
There you will learn from Yoda.
After 3 hours 2 minutes, Luke starts his second wave of training under a different master. He wins an imaginary lightsaber duel at 3 hours 6 minutes. Luke can barely levitate a stone at 3 hours 10 minutes. At 3 hours 50 minutes, Luke loses his first saber duel.
There is no escape.
Luke attempts a Jedi mind trick for the first time at 4 hours 30 minutes.
You will take me to Jabba now.
At 4 hours 48 minutes, Luke is still looking for more training.
I've come back to complete the training.
He is surprised to hear that he doesn't require more training, and that he is not a Jedi yet.
Not yet. One thing remains.
6 hours into the trilogy, Luke gains the upper hand in a saber duel for the first time. After 6 hours of movies, Luke has trained at every opportunity and has completed that training. This is what it means for someone to become a Jedi.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Now let's see how Anakin was handled. Anakin first appears 32 minutes into his trilogy, a little later. Shortly after, at 41 minutes, he boasts of his reflexes.
I'm the only human who can do it.
Anakin has been unconsciously using his Force sensitivity to be a better pilot.
He can see things before they happen. That's why he appears to have such quick reflexes.
We already knew Anakin had to be the best star pilot in the galaxy since the first movie.
He was the best star pilot in the galaxy.
For the entire rest of the movie, Anakin never actively uses the Force. Anakin is not trained, but he is given the opportunity to watch a Jedi Master.
I'm not allowed to train you, so I want you to watch me and be mindful.
After 2 hours, Anakin is no longer forbidden from training.
Your apprentice, Skywalker, will be.
At 2 hours 30 minutes, Anakin is warned that his passive Force senses are still not attuned.
Besides, your senses aren't that attuned to my young apprentice.
10 years of training have gone by to reach this point.
I haven't seen her in 10 years, Master.
By 2 hours 45 minutes, Anakin levitates an object for the first time on screen.
As wise as Master Yoda and as powerful as Master Windu.
After 4 hours 24 minutes, Anakin loses his first lightsaber duel. Only after 4 hours 52 minutes does Anakin win a saber duel. At 5 hours 15 minutes, Anakin has all but completed his training.
You are on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of Master.
He is surprised to hear that he is not a Jedi Master yet.
What?
Finally, at 6 hours 38 minutes, Anakin sees himself lose one final duel with his own eyes. With that background knowledge in place, we can evaluate the character of Rey Disney. For the utmost fairness possible, I use the same timing method for all 3 sets of movies. Rey appears earlier than the Skywalkers, a mere 10 minutes into the movie. That's good. This means there's slightly more time for her to train. Let's see what they do with the time given to them. At 53 minutes, Rey hears about the Force for the first time.
Thought it was a bunch of mumbo-jumbo. A magical power holding together good and evil, the dark side and the light.
From first appearance on screen, Luke took 18 minutes to hear about the Jedi, the Force, and to be offered training. After 40 minutes of his introduction, Luke began training. Rey has racked up 43 minutes since introduction without knowing Jedi exist. To play Darth's advocate, maybe they're setting Rey up as more like Anakin than Luke. Maybe she'll not be trained or actively use the Force until the second movie. And that could work, and then a time skip of 10 years allows her time to train. At 1 hour 7 minutes, Rey meets a dried apricot. She steals a lightsaber without the knowledge or blessing of its rightful owner.
I shouldn't have gone in there.
More importantly, the brand mascot for the dried fruit company is a potential mentor.
I am no Jedi, but I know the Force.
Even Disney knew they couldn't get away with calling this thing a Jedi, but it's better than nothing. Nothing. There's a perfect description of the knowledge and training Rey has so far. The apricot claims to know something about the Force.
No.
Naturally, Rey instantly rejects the idea of learning anything from a prune.
I don't want any part of this.
Luke didn't reject the training, he just refused to leave his home and family.
You must learn the ways of the Force, if you're to come with me to Alderaan.
Alderaan? I'm not going to Alderaan. I've got to get home. It's late. I'm in port as it is.
He wouldn't abandon the farm to go off on some damn fool idealistic crusade. Ben Kenobi was already committed to leaving the planet, and Luke refused to follow until his uncle was ready to do without him.
Look, I can take you as far as Anchorhead. You can get a transport there to Mos Eisley or wherever you're going.
This puts Rey considerably behind, but it could be salvaged. Time to move on. At 1 hour 30 minutes, Rey uses an old Jedi mind trick.
You will remove these restraints and leave this cell with the door open.
This is an active Force technique. It's not some passive enhancement like the piloting skills of Luke and Anakin.
I understand you've become quite a good pilot yourself.
Besides, passive Force usage is already required to explain Rey's own piloting. Not even going to touch that. If we call this active Force use, that puts her 41 minutes faster than Luke, 75 minutes faster than Anakin. Except that's not right, because that would be if Rey had telekinetically opened her restraints. The Jedi mind trick is exactly 3 hours and 2 movies ahead of when a fully trained Luke used one. Okay, now let's look past this absurd timing. This movie makes a distinction between the Jedi and the Force. This is not a Force mind trick, it is specifically tied to the Jedi.
What, you think you're some kind of Jedi waving your hand around like that?
Luke witnessed this ability before leaving his homeworld for the first time.
You don't need to see his identifications.
I thought we were dead.
The Force can have a strong influence on the weak-minded.
After training under 2 different Jedi Masters for 2 movies, Luke learns the technique. A Force-sensitive person can learn this ability by inheriting the knowledge and experience of 1,000 generations of Jedi.
For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic.
Fine then, Rey doesn't know it's possible, had no time to learn, and didn't have access to the only people who knew this technique. Besides all that, what's wrong here? Well, for a wizard to cast this Confundus charm, it doesn't just take arcane knowledge and years of practice. Casting the Jedi mind trick requires a somatic component. Like many others, this Force technique requires a hand gesture, or equivalent appendage. One of the defining features of the somatic component is that if your hands are bound, you can't cast that spell. Remind me of Rey's predicament at the time again? Oh, that's right. She's tied to a bed in a sturdy set of manacles. Whoopsie daisy, an innocent mistake that could have happened to anyone. Anyone who did 0 research on the subject matter anyway. Moving right along, at 1 hour 53 minutes, Rey makes active use of the Force. This one is telekinesis, pulling a lightsaber to her hand. Only 18 minutes ahead of when Luke did the same thing, and 52 minutes ahead of Anakin, except that in those cases, it was only lifting against gravity. Rey is doing something fundamentally different here. She is making an opposed roll. A trained Force user of a higher level attempts to move the target object, and she wants to move it somewhere else. Suppose that little Annie tried this against Qui-Gon's apprentice. We know that Anakin has a greater potential in the Force than Obi-Wan, but is completely untrained.
The reading is off the chart. Over 20,000.
Even Master Yoda doesn't have a midichlorian count that high.
Who do you think would win a telekinetic tug-of-war? That's right, every single time the winner would be the one who has trained for years.
Obi-Wan is ready.
I am ready to face the trials.
No amount of talent or conviction could hope to overcome knowledge and experience. Well, actually there is one way this scene might work. Yoda tells us that the dark side of the Force is not stronger. He says it is quicker, easier, and more seductive. The only way for a complete novice— wait, not a novice, that implies too much training. For a completely uninitiated layman to win an opposed role for Force use, it must be the dark side. The pathetic scavenger has known nothing but a life ruled by aggression and fear.
But beware of the dark side. Anger, fear, aggression. The dark side of the Force easily let flow, quick to join when it fights.
There exists no mentor to instruct her in the Jedi way. Both of the Skywalkers are disciples of the light side, the Jedi. If they gave in to hate, like Rey did, they might have learnt telekinesis more quickly. Except that even this explanation doesn't work. Rey doesn't go up against someone who's committed to staying in the light. Her opponent is someone with years of training in the Jedi way, and who has more experience with the dark side. This doesn't work at all. It's like Rey rolled a 100 on a 6-sided die. That isn't even cheating, like with Watto's loaded chance cube. It's a complete failure to understand what's going on. It's playing hopscotch when the game is badminton. Continuing the comparison, with the stolen saber in hand, she has a fight. It's clear she has never seen a sword fight, but she might have heard about one. Her swordsmanship is slightly more refined than that of a 6-year-old with an imaginary stick. Oddly enough, it only gets worse from here. In this one, she keeps attempting a thrust. It never works, but it's better than the baseball bat form she favors later on. There's an amusing mutual grapple where both parties have enough wrist movement to end it at any time. Again, this could work if she gave in to the dark side, and her opponent had zero training. Aside from the laughable choreography, we're interested in the timing. She wins a saber duel 243 minutes ahead of Luke, and 175 minutes ahead of Anakin. By the way, did I mention this duel is the first time she has ever seen an active lightsaber? Let's look at it another way. Instead of comparing the first duel the Skywalkers win to the first one she wins, what about to their first duels? It's a bit complicated because winning your first saber duel is unprecedented. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan have decades of practice at sparring, so they aren't comparable. Rey Disney wins her first saber duel 113 minutes before Luke loses his first one. She wins her first duel 147 minutes before Anakin loses his first one. She has never witnessed a lightsaber fight before, when both Skywalkers had done hours earlier. Now, you could say this is because of the caliber of opposition. Both Skywalkers had to fight a fully trained Lord of the Sith as a mere Jedi apprentice. Rey only duels an edgy teenage dropout, so of course he's completely incompetent. She could probably win if she was completely unarmed, given that he's completely unable to land a single strike. Then she meets Jake.
You don't need Luke Skywalker.
I came to this island to die.
The depressed, cowardly hermit. Rey's refusal to learn is matched by Jake's refusal to teach.
Go away!
She claims that Kylo Ben is strong in the dark side.
We need you to bring the Jedi back because Kylo Ren is strong with the dark side of the Force.
But that's obviously false. If he was anything approaching competent or powerful, she'd already be dead. At 3 hours 6 minutes, Jake Skywalker has a giggle at her expense.
I feel something.
You feel it?
Yes, I feel it. That's really?
Wow, it must be really strong
Oh,
with you.
never Ow!
This is the closest she comes to training, and it lines up with Luke continuing his training under Yoda. This is also half an hour slower than Anakin, who had all his training take place off-camera between movies. After 3 hours 16 minutes, she does a little dance while holding a stick. This is to practice her precision of movement, coordination, accuracy, that sort of thing. It's no substitute for, say, a training remote. Good against remotes is one thing, good against an inanimate lump of rock is something else. Rey isn't good at either. Her Mary Sue powers only activate against the living. But if this is equivalent to Luke's first lightsaber training, she is 140 minutes later than him. At 3 hours 36 minutes, she beats up a sad, suicidal old man. I don't think there's an equivalent from Star Wars to compare this to. By 4 hours into the reboot trilogy, Rey has a fight against a pack of harmless red dudes. This roughly lines up with Luke's sail barge fight, or Anakin in the Geonosis arena. There was never any real danger, and not just because we know Anakin lives through it. Then, at 4 hours 34 minutes, she effortlessly lifts a tonnage far greater than something Yoda struggled with. This isn't comparable to anything the Skywalkers, or anyone else, do, for obvious reasons. Finally, after 5 hours and 1 minute of footage, Rey begins to train. In terms of timing, this training is 119 minutes behind Luke, and 151 minutes behind Anakin. Yet, in terms of ability, Rey has remained constant, regardless of how much or how little training she gets. Why would she suddenly need training now? Of course, I do understand the reason. The Mouse Company realized that there is no name they can call their detractors that will stop them from noticing things. Declaring Rey is the first female Jedi ever, that won't work anymore. People keep pointing out how that's not true, and how beloved the real Jedi were. Another academic article claiming everyone who doesn't like the reboot is Russian, that's no help at all. Regardless of what they say, their Mary Sue character will still be called what she is. But by the time they realized they needed to step up the damage control, it was too late. The training should have taken place during or before the first movie. Failing that, it should have been both before and during the second movie.
I bypassed the training.
Since none of that happened, the only remaining place to put the training was before the plot of the last movie gets going. This is a perfect example of too little, too late. By the time the evil corporation attempted a course correction, it made things worse.
We need to put some hold-on maneuvers.
You see, the previous movies had established impossible feats as something Rey can do. Suddenly deciding she does need training, like a mortal from the Star Wars universe, is incorrect. You can't put the genie back in the toothpaste tube. She can do things that require training before getting any training. Putting a training scene after the fact helps nothing. Now that we've proven training isn't the answer, what would a competent person have written? That's beside the point, because it wouldn't look anything like the reboot universe. The first thing to fix is a very strange line, right before the training. I'm starting to think it isn't possible to hear the voices of the Jedi who came before.
Starting to think it isn't possible to hear the voices of the Jedi who came before.
Well, of course it isn't. Poe Dameron, this is your 11th warning about this. You mustn't take advantage of Rey's gullibility like that. If you tell her she can hear the voices of all the previous airbenders, she doesn't know that's a joke. She's spent the last 3 days floating, and getting upset when she realizes it isn't possible. This also means we need to remove a funny line from the final boss fight. And I, pant, heavy breathing, gasp, huff and puff, am all the Jedi. I'd never considered leaving that in for a nanosecond anyway, so it's no loss.
And I...
It's me, Mario!
To repair this, we need a spare part. Given that Rey never needs to learn or practice, she must already have access to the knowledge. I've heard she stole the training during the interrogation scene, when the Vader wannabe accidentally probed himself instead of her. This is laughable. You're telling me the badman isn't incompetent, he just downloaded Space Kung Fu into his enemy by mistake.
Combat training.
He can't beat someone with no training, because he instantly trained her up to his own skill level? If that were possible, why wouldn't the Jedi have used it? Grab anyone the least bit force sensitive, install a lifetime of training, throw them into battle. No, that doesn't explain anything. The way to fix this is to turn Rey into a walking McMuffin. Years ago, Jake Skywalker saw the future. He realized that not the Empire would appear, led by not Palpatine. It wouldn't be safe to operate in the open. He would need to hide until the time is right. But any physical location can be searched. If Jake were to, say, write some books on paper, They might get burnt. A Jedi holocron could be discovered and destroyed. He needed to hide the Jedi lore somewhere nobody would look. Jake went to the planet not Tatooine and found a family of nobodies with a young child. A daughter a few years old, are Force sensitive. Jake grasps the little girl by the face and performs a Vulcan mind meld. He installs a Jedi Katra into her mind, then covers his tracks. Young Rey is now a repository of all Jedi knowledge, and she will never find out without help. When the time is right, he will return and use that stored knowledge to set up a new Jedi temple. Rey's parents understand the risk and the dire need. He convinces them that the only way to save the galaxy is by using their daughter as an unwitting pawn. All that is needed is to guide her to the far side of the chessboard. The parents flatly refuse to sit around waiting when the stakes are this high. After an argument, Jake Skywalker relents. He will appoint a guardian to watch over the girl, just as Kenobi kept an eye on the young Luke. The decision reached, he reaches in to meddle with Rey's memories. Her mind is scoured clean of anything that might give away the plan. The names and faces of her parents, even her own surname, gone. Every childhood memory, every time the family laughed and cried together, Jake couldn't risk leaving anything behind. He ushers the parents out as the new guardian holds young Rey by the hand. A ship takes off and all three fly away. Young Rey is sure that ship departing represents a great loss, but she doesn't know what. Time passes. Eventually, Rey decides that the ship must have been her parents. Everyone has parents, right? Everyone but her. All she had was Guardian, and he wasn't much of a father. Years pass, and one day, Guardian stops moving. No matter how much she pleads or promises to behave, he doesn't respond. He doesn't even blink, even after days. Finally, she kicks Guardian in the shin, and he falls face first into the table. He makes no attempt to catch himself, and clatters to the floor. Rey moves past the stage of bargaining. She thinks back over her life. Guardian never broke a sweat, no matter what. His body hasn't even started to decompose months later. Rey realizes that Guardian had been a human replica droid all along. As far as she can remember, Guardian was the only entity in the galaxy that ever cared about her. Rey swears she'll fix him. If it takes the rest of her life, she'll repair the droid. But to do that, she will need parts and know-how. Adolescent Rey becomes a scavenger. There are a few years of rations left over, but not enough. She'll have to start selling any scrap that won't help bring Guardian back to life. But the parts needed for a human replica droid aren't standard on any make and model. She accepts defeat and lives the rest of her life as a scavenger, until one day the plot catches up with her. When BB-8, Poe, and Finn turn up, something unexpected happens to her. She starts getting flashes of insight, knowing things she couldn't possibly know. When she gets into combat, she fights like a thing possessed. Almost as if she has 1,000 generations of experience guiding her hand. Most of the time, though, that knowledge is out of reach. And there we have it. Sure, it's not ideal, but the previous Disney movies paint this one into a corner. Most of all, it's a way to explain how Rey has abilities that require training without any training. The ideal solution would be to fix these problems at the source. And we will go back to those other two reboot movies, believe me. Next, there are more unauthorized force powers. The entire finale to the movie is based on 2 or 3 things JJ has invented. To give credit where it's due, he did go back through the script to foreshadow them, or at least, to prevent them from coming out of nowhere to save the day. The first of these new inventions is to reveal that Rey is a witch. Specifically, she is made of wood. JJ has had a great idea. He is extremely pleased with himself. Rey, he explains, is a dryad, an Entwife, a forest spirit that watches over nature, sort of a Force Lorax, if you will. She speaks for the trees.
What Palpatine doesn't know is we're a dyad in the Force, Rey. 2
Then a one.
You know the one. You buy one, you get one free. I said, you buy one, you get one free.
I don't know what made him think that was a sensible plan. There is no such thing as a Force Dryad in the Star Wars universe, or any other kind of Dryad, as far as I know. This was only invented in order to patch holes in the plot. Whenever something absurd happens, he can just wave it away as being Dryad magic. After all, if no Dryads existed before, JJ can dream up anything at all. Or perhaps this was all Disney, trying to appeal to the Tolnedran demographic. They thought making their newest Disney princess a Dryad would be appealing. We can simply reject this idea and move along. It has no basis in fact, the desperate invention of someone who ran out of good ideas. For no reason at all, let's look at a comment Luke made. C-3PO asks how he can help his new master. Luke jokes that nothing can be done unless you can alter time, speed up the harvest, or teleport me off this rock. Luke is not serious. He wants to leave home, and these are jokes. He knows a protocol droid can't do any of these things.
I don't think so, sir. I'm only a droid and not very knowledgeable about such things.
In fact, that nobody can. That holds true for anyone in the Star Wars universe. Obviously, that is no barrier to a Mary Sue. That kind of bad fanfiction character isn't bound by the reality she was shoehorned into. The reality warping field will rewrite the universe in whatever way would be convenient for her. Let's compare the abilities of a Mary Sue to what we already know is laughable. Could she speed up the harvest? I have no doubt. She can probably wring water from a stone, or conjure it from thin air. Could she teleport Luke off the planet Tatooine? Of course she can. Her ability to teleport is essential for the plot of the movie. Could she alter time? I'll give you a hint. The Mary Sue can always do anything. This first shows up in a set of tunnels under the quicksand beans. Why is there quicksand here? Nobody knows.
We're using black beans in order to simulate black sand because they're much easier to push through.
How can one dig a tunnel through gravel?
You have to hold your breath. And panicking.
Just stop asking questions or trying to make sense of the movie.
Will this agony ever end?
Turn your brain off and look at the pretty lens flares. These mysterious tunnels are the home of a monster. When Jedi encounter such things, the scenario plays out in the same way. Luke is dragged into the lair of a wampa and cuts its arm off. Luke is dropped into Jabba's Rancor pit and defends himself to its death. Obi-Wan is to be executed by an Acklay and defends himself to its death. Anakin was assigned a reek instead, which fails to trample or gore him. Not through lack of trying. Silly Jedi, let Mary Sue Androcles show you how it's done. Turns out, the Jedi were the real monsters. They just enjoy killing things for the sake of it.
They're obviously hostile. Okay, Lieutenant, let them have it.
What they should have done is make friends with the beasts, offer them an arm to gnaw on.
And I slaughtered them like animals.
She senses that the giant snake has a thorn in its paw. In response, she invents a new power to deploy.
Look at that!
She has gained the ability of retrometabolism, the secret of reversing matter.
It will be useless for you to resist, for we have discovered the secret of reversing matter, as you have just witnessed.
In order to undo the wound on the snake, she alters time. By rewinding back to before it got injured, the big giant snake is restored to health. This sets up the use of this power another 3 times or so before the end of the movie. This strikes many people as being silly. Gosh, if this was possible in the Star Wars universe, it'd be quite handy. Maybe it has something to do with snake biology, and it doesn't work on anything humanoid. It certainly can't work against lightsaber wounds, or that would have come in handy before. Imagine how different the story would be if you could just Control Z away a stab from a lightsaber. Oh, I see. JJ just didn't think about the implications. The basic idea is quite solid. If you're making a computer game, it makes perfect sense to give a healing option. You can even emphasize character using it. The light side can heal the player with nothing but mana points. The dark side can only drain life from another being. They can't heal without a victim. But computer games aren't realistic. no matter which universe they portray. If your buddy died from bullet wounds, a defibrillator wouldn't help. Contrary to what some might have told you, there is nothing inherently wrong with force healing. It's a natural extension of the Force. I'd be more surprised if it could do nothing to heal. Indeed, we find documentation of this back in the West End Games RPG books. There is one difference between JJ's bright idea and what is possible in Star Wars. In the Disney universe, Jedi can cast cleric spells. Rey can yell, "Cure serious wounds," which is the name of a touch spell. It works by channeling positive energy into the target, so it'll damage the undead. Whoops. I might have been reading out a Dungeons & Dragons spell description instead. Still, it just so happens to exactly describe the abilities of a Disney spellcaster. Starts with the laying of hands, and it instantly heals any wound. Convenient. Contrast this with an actual Star Wars RPG. In the West End books, Jedi have a similar power. This one is named Accelerate Healing. As you might infer from the name, this is fundamentally different from D&D and Disney. It allows for a Jedi to heal about twice as fast as normal. If being stabbed with a lightsaber would normally take 8 months to recover from naturally, a Jedi can do it in 4 months. Notice how this way, the Star Wars way, injuries still matter. In Disney Wars, fatal wounds can literally be dismissed with the wave of a hand. That's just an RPG though. Maybe it doesn't line up with either the canon universe or the Disney one. Well, I just happen to have a reference here. It's from the prequel era, and it shows how this power can make things more interesting instead of less. In the first book of the Jedi Apprentice series, Qui-Gon has been injured by a vibroblade. He gets prompt medical treatment and uses the Force to accelerate his healing from there. This actually causes consequences instead of instantly removing them. Qui-Gon Jinn has spent the day using 2 powers, Accelerate Healing and Control Pain. Then he finds a situation where it would be beneficial to use a Jedi mind trick on a Hutt. It is implied that if he were at his full strength, Qui-Gon might be able to. If that's true, it would mean that Jabba's resistance doesn't come from being a Hutt. Hutts are resistant, true, but the rest is because Jabba has a strong mind as well. That would mean that Toydarians have a stronger inherent resistance to mind tricks than the Hutts do.
I'm a Toydarian! Mind tricks don't work on me!
I'm okay with that. However, Qui-Gon fails to influence the Hutt in question. Because it's possible to use the Force to accelerate healing, that can be used to drain a Jedi's mana pool. It can take other Force powers off the table. It can force a choice between exhausting your reserves to heal or keeping them at the ready for the unexpected. A Jedi is patient.
I cannot teach him. The boy has no patience.
You will learn patience.
J.J. Abrams is impatient, so he can't use the Star Wars approach. If wounds took any time to heal, he wouldn't be able to cram the whole trilogy into a single week. That means the finale has to be completely replaced, which it needed anyway. It wasn't very good, or any good at all. Using the Force to heal is fine, so long as it isn't directly related to the plot. If your story falls apart without the spell Cure Serious Wounds, it was never a Star Wars story to begin with. Finally, we have the other pillar of the finale, Force teleportation. If only Luke had asked Rey to teleport him off that rock instead of asking 3PO. In the Disney reboot universe, it is possible to teleport at will. I can't prove this, but I get the impression JJ thinks he was terribly clever.
We can do anything, Jar Jar.
JJ.
Anything.
Once again, though, JJ will have to share both credit and blame with RJ. This was established as part of the reboot in TLJ, in this scene. It doesn't even have to imply teleportation, though it's clear it's more likely it was supposed to be a teleport. Since Kylo wipes his face with the same hand before looking at it, there are 2 explanations. Either he's gathering the teleported water that splashed onto his face, or he's just been crying. If this was Star Wars, we could eliminate the impossible. What remains, however unlikely, is the truth. In Star Wars, we would know he was crying because teleportation is impossible. Is anyone surprised to hear JJ and RJ went for something that isn't possible? Didn't think so. Now, let's go back to the RPG books. There are 3 sets, 3 systems. The oldest is by West End Games, and is based on ordinary cubic dice, the D6. It is generally reliable, and covers the era of the original trilogy. If there is a disagreement between West End and a more recent source, I will probably go with the older one, even if the contradictory material is a prequel movie. After leaving West End, the RPG torch was passed to Wizards of the Coast. This version really is just D&D and space, or at least that's how it looks to me. Personally, I've mostly played Dark Heresy, so they look the same. This, the D20 system, is mostly based on the icosahedral die. This one is new enough to take the prequel trilogy into account. If you want to play a Gungan, you can do that here, or you could just run it past your West End DM. The final version is from Fantasy Flight Games. This coincides with the reboot, but I don't believe they're inherently linked. That system uses a variety of dice, D6, D8, D12. They have custom printed faces with a bunch of symbols, which may be more user-friendly, less maths, and they can print those symbols in the rulebooks. It does make it harder to bring your own dice bag though. You'd need a conversion table for each number to the appropriate symbol. Why bring this up? Well, the middle one, Wizards of the Coast, lists a relevant force power. Its name is Fold Space. It allows a character to move an object from one place to another without passing through the space in between. That is to say, it's a teleport. This is limited by both range and the size of the target object. It can scale up to teleport spaceships, but the range still applies. You can probably teleport a data card from surface to orbit, and vice versa. In contrast, the West End system makes no mention of this power. Whatever value this ability offers, it does far more damage than it's worth. Just find a way to write your Star Wars story without teleportation being involved at all. I side with the West End approach on this one. Where force healing is negotiable, teleportation is right out. Looking back at the Disney movies, teleportation is a premium feature of Force Skype. Assuming you maintain your subscription, you can attach physical objects to the messages you send. This is why it only happens once in TLJ. Kylo was using the free edition, and Rey had the free trial of Force Skype. They both upgraded their payment off camera between movies. Perhaps they even decided to share a family subscription plan. Ooh, spicy. The first time we see Force Skype teleport used, it's to take a necklace. Personally, I reckon teenage Kylo was trying to cop a feel, but missed and got a handful of necklace instead. Analysis of the necklace lets him chase Rey, but why?
Sir, we've had this analysed. It comes from the Midian system.
In the reboot, it's well established how tracking works. You walk up to an underling, you demand that he tracks something, and in the next scene that thing has been tracked.
They've tracked us through light speed.
That's impossible.
Yes.
That's all there is to it. Tracking is mostly about wanting to know. There's no need to plant a homing beacon or anything like that.
You're sure the homing beacon is secure aboard their ship?
The necklace is mostly to foreshadow Force Skype's new attachments feature. Next, Rey accidentally sends Kylo's expensive replica of Vader's mask to him. This reveals that she's in his bedroom, which isn't quite how Kylo had imagined that happening. The last significant use of teleportation is to solve the problem of Kylo being unarmed. He TLJ'd his own lightsaber, so Rey Force Skyped the one she stole to him. Good riddance. That crossguard saber was an absurd design. You remember how Darth Maul had a double saber? The reason it still worked after the hilt was cut in half is that Maul's is really two sabers. There are two complete sets of internal components, back to back in an extra large casing. 2 power cells, 2 blade emitters, 2 sets of saber crystals, and 2 complete sets of controls. It's nothing more than a lightsaber with a second one sticking out the back. Asajj Ventress had sabers with a bayonet fitting on the ends, so they could be combined like Maul's one. Contrast this with Exar Kun. This lightsaber was like any other, until he modified it with a second blade emitter matrix. Notice that's the only part that changed. No second power cell, no extra crystals, no double-length casing. We don't know how he managed this, since he used designs from a Sith holocron. This weapon is unique. Nobody else has managed to achieve 2 blade emitters with a single set of internals. Until the reboot. There is no question, Kylo's saber must have triple emitters. This can't happen by accident. If someone told you he built a saber with 3 blades by accident, you would know he's lying. I've put 3 light bulbs in my torch, and I can't understand why there are 3 light sources now. You can't have a blade without a blade emitter. It just doesn't work that way. There is 0 chance of extra blades venting out the side. can't happen. It would be like saying you accidentally transmuted lead into gold and trying to play that off as a failure. Creating a single lightsaber with multiple emitters would be a legendary feat, not some minor oddity. A lightsaber is a closed loop of energy. It shoots out from the emitter, then arcs back to the flux aperture ring. The blade length can be adjusted and is based on amplitude. Suppose he installed side emitters to lower the amplitude of the main blade. That wouldn't work to create crossguard quillions. The side blades would be a significant fraction of the main blade's length, or they'd be much longer. Also, this does not function like the guard on a metal sword. Lightsaber hilts are not immune to lightsaber blades. For the crossguard to work, it would need the gaps to be made of a saber-resistant material, otherwise the guard wouldn't be fit for its purpose. However, if you have access to a saber-resistant material, and you're using it for a lightsaber hilt, and you want a crossguard, you can just make the quillions from Mandalorian iron directly. None of the logical inconsistencies from this design would apply, if that were the design. You could even say he installed red LEDs in the crossguard so it can glow. Now, back to teleportation. The plot of JJ's movie doesn't actually require teleportation at all. Everything that can be accomplished through a teleport can be done another way. Adding teleport powers also causes any number of problems. RJ's first teleport is across the galaxy, to another star system. JJ's first teleport, the necklace, is also vastly interstellar. In both cases, neither party knows where the other is.
As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure which planet I'm on.
It's an instant, unguided teleport to anywhere at all. Since it isn't necessary, forced teleports can, and should, be removed. Otherwise, guess what becomes possible? For one thing, using multiple lightsabers is now easy. One in the hand, and the other can be teleported around. Useful as a distraction, or to ignite the saber into a weak point. But even better, there's one unbeatable attack. Take a thermal detonator. Leia, disguised as Bush, has a heavy Class A model from Merson munitions.
Because he's holding a thermal detonator!
It is particularly powerful. Jabba was well within the blast radius. The standard issue Imperial thermal detonator is carried at the back of a stormtrooper's belt. They have blank control keys to make it harder to use if stolen. The Imperial one has a blast radius of 5 meters. Leia's Class A has a 20-meter radius. Everything within that sphere would be vaporized, while everything else is unharmed. But if you can use the fold space power, the Force can be used to attack, can't be countered. You activate the grenade or thermal detonator, then teleport it into the body of your enemy. There's no way it can be removed from the stomach safely. The best scenario is that a vibroblade or lightsaber is handy, and the other guy can cut it out before the bomb goes off.
Hang on, kid.
However, the utility of teleportation doesn't end with telefragging. Imagine how the history of the galaxy would play out if Force users could teleport. The Jedi wouldn't be known as Guardians of Peace and Justice. The Jedi would be the Navigator Guild, the Navis Nobilite. With their unmatched teleportation abilities, there could be no better way to move objects to anywhere in the galaxy. If it was possible to force teleport in Star Wars, the history of the galaxy would be completely different. Wait a minute. The history of the Disney Wars universe is indeed completely different from Star Wars. Like the rest of JJ's ending, this is completely unsalvageable. It isn't necessary, and it isn't possible. That means taking this absurd idea out won't even change anything of consequence. Nothing in the reboot trilogy would even be affected, except the bits that never made any sense. 100 years ago, a satellite detected an object under the sands of the Great Desert. An expedition was sent. An ancient starship buried in the sand. Deep inside the ruin was a single stone that would change the course of our history forever. Ha! Tricked you. It was something of no value at all. Our Patreon supporters. Stay a while and listen. The gonk droid with the speech impediment. Conk. The last survivor of the 423rd Royal Battlemech Division. You misspelt survivor. Did they drop literacy as a requirement for the Battlemech program? Zafrex, our run-of-the-mill Discord Muppet. Is that all? That's barely better than when we had no patrons at all. Help remedy this sorry situation. Our Patreon link is in the description. Tally-ho.
What, you think you're some kind of Jedi waving your hand around like that? I'm a Toydarian. My tricks gonna work on me. Only money. No money, no parts, no deal.